as well. So let's talk about some problems of language or differences in language when we talk about sexuality and gender. Really, when we talk about sex, okay, that female sex or the male sex, we're talking about something that's objective, biological, a given data, which we can, our scientific truth, we can talk about the body. Okay, we're sexed into male and female. Okay, in classical sense. When we talk about gender, however, we're actually talking about something different. We're talking about a word with a different origin. Before the 1960s, the word gender referred to masculine or feminine nouns. Okay, it was a grammatical thing. Okay, in the 1960s, a writer called John Money began to talk about gender roles that we can ascribe to man and woman, different roles in society, which can be associated with one's psychological state, with one's social preference, and behaviour. Okay, so it's kind of recent. It's only in the last 50 or 60 years that the word gender and it's developed more in society. So, sex, your sex, male or female, is something hardwired. Okay, it's the hardware. It's the seasoned data of nature. Okay, one is either a man or a woman, biologically, and that's scientific. Gender can refer to a perception in an individual's mind, or the perception of a social class. So it can be sociological, or it can be psychological, individualistic. So it's different to what we mean by sex. So someone of gender may say, I'm actually don't feel that I identify with the gender that I have been given. Say my assigned gender is male, but I feel that I am female. So that's the way that word can be used in society. Now, I don't want to go into all the complicated things about that, because we miss the truth of what we're talking about when we talk about sexuality and gender if we do that. So I want to go into just sexual difference, okay, in John Paul II's writings. And this is from his Theology of the Body. As I said the last time, for John Paul II, there are two incarnations of the human person. Sometimes I'm a Thomist. That means I study St. Thomas Aquinas, and we look at the body, we look at it, body, soul, matter, form. We study it that way. What is the body? We think about one body. But John Paul II is different. He's always thinking about two bodies. He's questioned, why were there two bodies rather than one? I looked through a telescope. Okay, as a Thomist. John Paul II tends to look through binoculars. Okay, he sees double. Okay, he says, why did God, this visible sign, this thing on the earth at the beginning, not 3 or 4 bodies, but 2 bodies? What's this about? Were there 2 bodies rather than one? Were there 2 incarnations of the person? He says that these 2 bodies are 2 reciprocally, okay, kind of facing each other, reciprocating, sharing in some way, completing ways of being a body. So they're not, as such, independent of each other. It's like the remote control and the TV. They're not independent. They face each other. They work towards each other in a sense. There are 2 ways of being conscious of the meaning of the body. So the female understanding, self-consciousness of the body, its patterns, its behaviours, oneself in it, is different from the male's understanding, self-consciousness, awareness of the body, because they're 2 different bodies, okay, and they work biologically different rhythms, different. I'll talk about that in a little way. There are 2 complementary dimensions of self-consciousness and self-determination, okay, being free. He says very clearly at the beginning of the Theology of God, he said that sex, okay, what we're talking about, male or female, is constitutive for the person. And he goes to develop that how I realize myself, how I come to contentment, how I come to happiness or peace in my soul, is also determined by my body. Okay, it's how I live the given data, or the body that I've been given, because I'm sexed in some way. So my fulfillment as a male body will be as a man. Figuring out what that means, we don't always know. My fulfillment as a woman will be through the female body. And discovering, exploring what that means as well. It's not always clear to us what it means. One is either a man or a woman. Okay, keep going. Now, let's look at some science and psychology. These are a little bit random, but I'm not a scientist, but I thought it would be interesting just to look at some of what science is saying about the difference between the male body and the female body. And psychology as well. Interesting, when infant girls will look at the face of a silent adult for twice as long as infant boys. Okay, seems a bit crazy and random, but it points to something about relationship. Baby girls talk earlier, louder, and longer, on average. Okay, I'm sure there are exceptions to that. Endures more, keeps talking more, and uses more words. The female brain, in its shape, in its structure, has more connective brain fibers between the two sides of the brain. Okay, the male brain is more segmented. It's more boxed, you could say, in its functions and how it works, and even how we process information differs. And there's a lot of differences between, how it works in terms of perception, how we see, in terms of our memory, our vision, how we process emotion, our hearing, and even how we manage stress. Okay, just based on the different structure, personal structure of the person. I just took down 5 ones again. Okay, number 2, okay, is probably more important. Okay, verbal ability. Women tend to use both hemispheres of the brain in terms of their verbal communication, okay, more so than men. They have more verbal centers, okay, objectively, than men, and are more skilled at communicating feelings than men. Because of the configurement of the brain, how neurologists look at the brain and say, that's where I think that governs emotion or feeling, and the female brain is more adaptive in that sense. Okay, men see things differently. Men have a better tracking ability for moving objects, okay, because they have more M cells and a thicker retina. Women have more P cells, okay, so they're better at identifying objects and for distinguishing colours and textures. Okay, so different advantages there, different ways, even our perception, our basic visible sight works. Hearing, you might not know this, but women hear better than men. Okay, physically. Have 11% more neurons in brain centers for hearing and language. Okay, they can hear better, and this one's interesting, can distinguish a broader range of emotional tones. Okay. I thought that was quite interesting, in terms of motherhood and children, and picking up the sense of a person. John Paul II is very strong that The woman has a capacity for the other in a different way to the man. Okay, it's a different kind of genius or sensitivity to another person, especially when a person maybe comes into a room or a person is uncomfortable or something. Women feel pain more. Okay, the left amygdala is activated for internal functions, and the right for men. So, in some way, the pain in a physical sense it's felt more intensely by women. I'm being really hard on men. Okay, first one. Acoustic size judgment. Okay, say if you hear a person's voice, you don't see the person, and you're asked to judge what size is that person. Okay, men are better at this. Okay, 1.5 times better. Okay, they judge better. Judging a person's size through the sound of their voice. Okay, and it's marginal. And with these things, there can be, of course, exceptions to that. But you see what I'm doing? Even that's a list of 45. I've taken 5 out. Okay, but it's something that there's a general consensus on, and that we're still discovering, working on in science. But there's certain tendencies, certain preponderances, or certain advantages that are there objectively in the body. Okay, so what are we trying to say? About men and women. The basic Catholic position, as I understand it, is that men and women are equal. They're equal in dignity. They're equal in value. And one does not have more value than the other. Okay? And equality is a very loaded, a very much used word in our culture. And as Catholics, we're for equality. It's part of our creativeness. It comes from the beginning. Man and woman are equally the image of God. Okay? In a secular feminist setup or a way of thinking, that equality is sometimes equated with sameness. Okay? Man and woman are equal and the same. So in order to be, if there's an inequality, it can be so that to become equal, I must become as a man is. I must do what a man does. It becomes imitation in a certain sense. And that's fundamentally, we would say, an anthropological mistake. Okay? From a Catholic perspective, we say men and women are equal, but different. Okay? So the way a woman realizes herself and the way a man realizes himself is different. Okay? The way they discover their essence or who they are or what they're for is different. Sometimes conditioned through the body as well. And added to that, there's equality and difference, but there's also this word called complementarity. That men and women, they're reciprocal, they look at each other, they work together, they get married, they share an intimate common life with each other. And in that, there's a complementarity, which we're always trying to discover. It's a hard one to draw out. Where are men and women complement? If you're already married, or if you've been in a stable relationship, you've probably seen that work already. That your boyfriend or your girlfriend brings out a richness and a newness to things that you don't have. Okay? And you see things through the other person, and they teach you things, and you learn things from the other. And the other person is quicker at something else, and you're slower, and you're maybe the one who calms things, the other one who makes initiation or things like that, different ways, okay? Some ways in which John Paul II talks about it, okay, he talks in terms of fatherhood and motherhood. He said that the man, from the beginning, is somehow placed outside the pregnancy. Okay, when a woman becomes pregnant, when she's with his child. And he says that the man actually has to learn his fatherhood through the mother. She's the one who invites him towards his own fatherhood. She's the seed of it. She's the one who tells him, you could say. But she's also the one who brings him into the whole plateau of what's happening. because she's much closer to it. It's happening within her. She's already developing a relationship with this young person, with the baby in her womb. But the man is on the outside, so he needs the woman to be brought in. Okay, that's just one of John Paul II's way of talking about it. Men, it might surprise you this, men are prone to discouragement in society. Men get much more easily discouraged than women. Women in general are more optimistic, can be more resilient at times, and their role in terms of complementarity can be to encourage men. Okay, to not lose heart. I remember one time on the mission team in Pure in Heart, which I'm their spiritual director. Remember, Emmett was on the mission team. Emmett would get very down about things, but there were 2 girls on the mission team, and they said, this is how all the time we were the ones encouraging. We're always kind of, we're less discouraged, less easily, and trying to, if things didn't go too well on the mission team, to build it up again and go again. So women can be more optimistic and can encourage men to be heroic in ordinary things. Another one in terms of fatherhood is that the father has a unique role in terms of a male child or a son. That the woman may nurture, she may console, she may encourage in many ways, but it's through the man that the young boy or the son learns his kind of rite of passage into manhood. Because men look at men, boys look at their father, they learn what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, they learn what is to be a man through the father. And the father has a very pivotal role here. He can discourage it. He can repulse the son, which can be very damaging. Or he can see his son make the milestones in his progression, or make development, and encourage him and invite him, like a mentor, into full manhood. Do you understand? And that's very important. And when that's displaced, when that's not there in society, things go wrong. I was in Trinidad and Tobago during the summer, and one of the women there was telling me about the gangs there. Says that because of brokenness in the home, the gang leader becomes the father. He becomes the mentor for young boys who come from brokenness. And he's the one who becomes the father figure. And of course teaches or, shows a kind of completely inappropriate way of learning. You want to be like me? Do you want to be what I have? Boys, listen to that. Young men, listen. We listen to older men. In a lot of the films you see that, in kind of hero films you see that it's always a mentor. And at whole crisis time in the movie, the young man will go to the mentor. He could be a coach or an old pilot or someone who's come through the whole drama of life. And he says, and the whole problem is often resolved through the meeting with the mentor. An older, more solid guy. Do you understand? Which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but it can be redirected. That's it. Okay. And then another one, just more about complementarity. I heard this about a fireman. The fireman. So he goes into these very brutal situations, emergency situations. There's hardship in his career, in his line of work. But the woman in his life, his wife, introduced him to a whole other side of his humanity. Okay, when he got home. Because of this harshness, if you're an ambulance driver or if you meet all these disaster zones all the time, that's part of your life. Part of you kind of goes numb. But his wife she introduced this whole tenderness, this whole feminine touch, this whole softness, or this whole consolation to him, which was another side of who he was as well. But he needed that, and he saw how that, helped cope with the other side. Or you're posted, you just want to get home. Lots of stories I've written about that in songs. I just want to get home. I just want to be home for Christmas. That sense. But that's part of it. Okay, it's that complementarity. Okay. Now, Here's another one that's a little bit more interesting. Sensuality. It's part of the attractiveness of men and women to each other. We're sensual. We have bodies. We're attractive. Okay, we find bodies attractive. I'm talking about in a good sense. And sensuality is a responsiveness to the human body. Okay, typically maybe to male and female, even though it's not always that way. The attraction, the body is enjoyable, it's pleasurable, and it's innocent. Okay, we like being with this body. When people go on their first date, or 17 or whatever, maybe I think it was earlier today, but it's just being with, sipping Pepsi or sweetened Coke in a McDonald's with someone, and you just like being with this body. It's just enjoyable. This person's looking at you for the first time. Okay. John Paul II, well, it's before he became John Paul, it's way too, okay, when he's a philosopher, when he's a cardinal, when he's a priest, he says that this aspect of our sensuality is part of the whole chemistry of men and women. It's part of our bodies, it's part of our natural, sexuality, you could say. And he says if it's not morbid, if it's not disordered or in some way prone to abuse or manipulation of others, it's raw material, it's potential for love. Okay, when you find someone attractive, when you find the body attractive, when you like their presence, when you like being in someone's company, just like even on a physical level. Okay. He said, but yet when it's divorced from the person, when the body kind of takes on its own kind of value, void of the person, then it becomes the opposite of love. It's just about the body, and it's no longer about the person. And that's how people manipulate or take advantage of each other. But he said, we have to cope with this. We have our sexuality. I mean, it tends to be stronger in men, and not as strong in women. That's a tendency, okay? There can be exceptions on that front as well, okay? And sometimes when the man is working on a sensual level, the woman is working on a different level, on sentimental level. Okay, this is where women are stronger. Okay, typically. Okay, emotion, sentiment, feeling. This is different. Okay, this is different to sensuality. It's part of the attractiveness, part of the interrelationship with man and woman. Okay, the value is not the body. It's not the body you're looking at here. Okay, when it comes to sentiment, it's the value of the whole person of the other sex. I can admire their feminine characteristics, their grace, their elegance, their beauty. Okay, or the masculine characteristics, the strength, the ruggedness, the action-centered life. That sense. So I admire those things in another person. Sentiment is different again because it's a source of affection. We have a sense of beauty. We contemplate the other. We look at the other. We kind of gaze at the other in a sense. We enjoy them not for their bodies, but for a different level, for aesthetic values. Okay, again, beauty. It's not an urge to consume. When sensuality goes wrong, it kind of becomes consumptive. Okay, it can't get enough of the body. Okay, and this is different. This is more affection. It's a different kind of need. It's an emotional state. It can be expressed in a desire for nearness, for exclusivity, or intimacy. When people want to go for a walk, when people want to sit in the park, when people want to leave the common company, when they just want to be with the beloved, when they just want to be near this person, that can be just for sentimental reasons, because of feelings. I have feelings for you, you have feelings for me. When we're alone, we have a different connection. okay. We need to be alone, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So there can be an experience of mental closeness, even when they're apart. Even when you're in Belfast and your boyfriend is in Dublin. Okay. That sense. Okay. a sense of a tie between people. And they seek ways of expressing, okay? There's a special look, there's a special gesture, there's a special turn of phrase, there's a special tone of voice, okay? So it's expressed in different ways. Okay, it's not expressed like sensuality, it's a different kind of expression of our humanity. In looks, in words and gestures, okay? That when the other person enters the room, your eyes meet, you know each other, you're intimate. I'm not talking about sexual intimacy, I'm talking about, just you're seeing someone, you've really got to know someone, and you've met each other. Okay, so there's a thing. Okay, women tend to be stronger here. Okay. It doesn't mean that men are not emotional, in any sense, but typically women are stronger on this level. There is difficulty here, however, that when Wojtyła or John Paul II talks about sensuality and sentiment, when he talks about our bodies, our senses and our emotions, he said these are very variable. These are very transient. Okay, they change. Okay, they change in marriages. They change in long-term relationships. Okay, I may have completely different feelings for this person that I had in my first 3 months. I'd say 18 months is a good judge of a relationship. Sometimes, will it actually endure? Will it work? Because it has to go beyond feelings. Okay, it has to go beyond the body and sexuality. He says that sentimental love is very often a cause of disillusionment. Because when we're sentimentally attached, when we're emotionally involved with someone, we tend to project values on that person that he or she actually doesn't have. We tend to look at the person, see what we want, we tend to idealize him or her, and say, this is what I've always wanted. This is the person I've always been looking for. But that's actually not happening in the other person, it's happening in us. Okay, so sentimental love, falling in love, romance, the big date, getting overly attached or overly emotional too quickly can be dangerous. Okay, it can be harmful. You've got to be careful. Okay, and that the values you're ascribing to the person, that person may not have. They're coming from you. You choose to see what you want to see. Okay, you push out the negatives. Girls are nodding here. Okay, okay. Yeah. So man and woman alike may be disillusioned to find that the values ascribed to the beloved person are fictitious. Okay. So we can deceive ourselves by our emotions, men and women. Okay. So he's saying that on the level of attractiveness of the body, sensuality, on the level of emotions or sentiment, that's not a firm enough foundation for love. It can be preparatory, it can be provisional, it can be the way, but in some sense there has to be more for it to be a true union of persons, not just a union of bodies or a conglomeration of feelings. Okay. Love, he says, demands a completeness. It demands an integration of values. Okay, that these two values, sensuality and emotion, must be integrated into higher values, into spiritual values. And there are two that he talks about. He says love has a spiritual imprint. That's what he's getting at here, in terms of freedom and truth. The first one is a value that doesn't change. It's a value you can't give a person. Okay? It's something objective. That every person, man or woman, has intrinsic value. Okay? It can't be given by the state. It can't be given by the girlfriend or boyfriend or wife or husband. It can't be given. It's already there. And you can't take it either. Okay? You might not, do well with it, okay? He says this value of the person is not as spontaneous, it's not as quick, it's not as impulsive sometimes as sensuality and emotions. Because when people are attracted to each other, they like each other, they go on a few dates, you know, the emotions and the sensuality can be very strong. You know, we talk about hormones, so they almost spontaneously, and people do this all the time, and they say, I think it's the right person, I've never felt this way before, could this be, is this love, you know, and you say, kind of, yeah, I mean, we probably go in the right direction, but we don't know yet, okay? But he was saying no, okay? He's saying no. He said no, whoa, hold on, okay, wait now. It could be, okay? But you need to be careful, okay? It needs to get integrated into higher values. Okay, one of them is the value of the person, okay? It's invariable, it's inviolable, it's inscribed in one's being. He says love, this is the definition, love is a quickness to affirm the value of a person in every circumstance. Okay, not the value of the emotion, not the value of the sentiment or the sensuousness of the body, but the value of the person. Remember, it's slower. We have to choose it. It takes a deeper decision. It takes more time to mature. It means really getting to know this person. It means really beginning to respect this person. And it's moving towards loving this person unconditionally. You know, pretty face or not a pretty face, wrinkles or grey hair or, you know, a new blushing bride, whatever. You know, it's not based on that. It's based on the person. You know, it's why older couples are lovely when they walk down the strand hand in hand, aren't they? It's not about sentiment, it's not about sensuality, because it's on a completely different level. They're best friends because they've lived together for 40 years. And they know each other on a completely different level. That's more like love. Okay? And yet, the avenue to it is often through the other thing, okay? Through the spontaneity of emotions. But we can't stay here. We have to go to this higher value, the value of the person. Okay. And then it goes back to what we were talking about the last time. We were talking about, you know, Adam and Eve and all. Okay, it says that the only way, you know, if you love another person, a spouse or a woman or a man, is if you're willing to give yourself unconditionally to him or to her. If you're willing to make that act of your will, okay, your spiritual will, and it's your mind also thinking, your reason as well, integrating all the emotions, sensuality, that may still be there, obviously will be in a marriage as well, but you're willing to make what he calls that gift of self. You're going to make that irrevocable gift of yourself to another person. Not a person, not a thing, not just a sensuous object, but a person that you've got to know, love, can't do without, would do anything for, and you're completely committed to this other. Okay? And this is that's the recipe for marriage. Okay? That's the avenue to marriage of man, a union man and woman, okay? An indissoluble sacrament, okay, in the Catholic tradition, okay? And this is the way he talks about it, because it's a nice way he puts it. He says, the essence of betrothal love, married love, is self-giving. The surrender of one's I. This is something different from attraction, desire, or even goodwill. These are all ways by which one person goes out towards another, but none of them can take him as far in his quest for the good of the other as betrothed love. Okay, the surrender of one's I, the gift of oneself, the laying down of one's self for this other, which really is, it's summed up in the words, I do. You take Jennifer, or you take, you know, Matthew, to be your husband, you know, for better or for worse, you know, I do. Okay, it's just two words, but it's the ingredient of love. Okay, it's the essence of it. Okay, so when he was talking about married love, he's talking about man and woman. He's in our culture today. We tend to stay on the level of sensuality and sentiment. Okay, Valentine's Day, which is fine, but it's often about that. Okay, in culture today, love is described on that level. Okay, it's epitomized. It's a finished job. It's there on that level. But for Wojtyła, if it excludes the value of the person, if it excludes the gift of self, it's not love. It can be a very immature form of love, but it's not love in what we're getting as a Catholic perspective, or our understanding of married love or betrothed love. Does that make sense? Okay. So I've gone over time, but so maybe a minute or two, just talk among yourselves, and maybe we'll have some questions then. Is that okay? Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions to ask? No? You can get other people to ask your own question if you're trying to ask.
Is it a bit surprising? Maybe not.
Yes, no. This is the yes or no
It's
question.
like a realization.
Okay. Okay. So think about it, just to open discussion. It's not really to describe it as wrong, or are there other things we can add to this? I'm sure there are, lots of things, but just to get a basic blueprint of what we're talking about.
Father, in terms of sexuality, if say we have a friend who's coming to the faith, but they're homosexual, what should our approach be?
She asked, you probably all heard that, did you? If a friend coming to the faith is homosexual, your approach should be great sensitivity, okay, great compassion and respect for the person. That's what the Catechism says, okay. That our basic disposition for Catholics, for individuals who suffer with same-sex attraction, is great sensitivity, and even how you begin to explain the teaching of the Catholic Church on marriage. Okay, I suppose one thing that is helpful is that I'm not defined as a person by whom I'm attracted to. Okay, it doesn't define me. Okay, some people define themselves, I'm gay or I'm straight or I'm transgender. Okay, but in a Catholic sense, I think personhood is deeper again. Okay, and also in the sense that we don't teach as Catholics that that's someone's fault. Okay, it's not a choice they made. Okay, it may be something that's come up to background. This whole discussion and debate, what's the origins of homosexuality? Generally, there's so many origins that we don't actually know. Okay, nurture, nature, we don't know. Okay, but that person, like you or me, or like anyone else who's heterosexual, is called to love. Okay, is called. Everyone's vocation is to love. Okay, how that person lives it out will be different. Okay, if this girl doesn't feel called to married with a man, okay, but she can be called to friendship. She can be called to we call disinterested friendship. That's probably the wrong word. A kind of sincere friendship with others. She can be called to a sincere sense of self-giving for others. Okay, which can be outside of marriage. Okay, for example, I generally call things to love because I think that's what people understand. That you're not incapacitated, you're not defective, you're not blotted out from love because you have same-sex attraction. You can become a saint as well, you know. So you can come to a very close union with God. How you live your interpersonal relations will be different, okay, than man and woman who are heterosexual and want to get married, okay. So there is a cross there as well. Does that help a bit? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? You may get them now, but not later.
Yeah. Well, they got me later as well. I don't mind. It's just for others to kind of,
Yeah.
you know, just explore the thing, discuss things, you know.
Could be one question that you heard among your friends, or questions your friends will have asked you and you don't have an answer to, or you require clarification on.
So, like, one of the common questions that we get is actually, like, doesn't the Catholic Church, okay, I'm trying to find the right word, doesn't the Catholic Church condemn those people with same-sex attraction to singlehood and never to be able to marry or live out their lives with any sort of sexual intimacy, like, you know? So, like, how would you kind of respond to that?
Yeah, I would say the Catholic Church doesn't condemn you to unhappiness. Okay. But you have to live out that same-sex attraction in a way that's fully consistent with God's will, with God's plan. Go through the scriptures, okay, go through the traditional church, go through the common kind of history of humanity and say that this is what we're given, this is the way God has revealed to us that the marriage is between a man and a woman. But your happiness is not to go against God's will. You know, you can have deep intimacy with God, you can have deep friendships, you can have a very full life. You can be fully realised yourself as a person. There may be something missing, okay, but you're not. Happiness is not something ruled out for you. That's been one way of trying to answer it, you know. Any more?
You know, say you're married to this person that it's very abusive towards you.
Mm-hmm.
It could be physical.
Yeah.
And you want to divorce them. Is that like completely, like he's, like say the person's actually like crying for you.
Yeah. Yeah, difficult. Okay, difficult. You know, someone's been abusive to you, mentally, physically, different levels, okay? The church allows for separation, okay, in situations like that. I recognise that, you know, the partners need to be separated, okay, for the good, say, of the woman in this case, so she can live independently, okay? Technically, she's still married. Okay, she's still married. Now, if there was some deception in character, if there were things she didn't know about the person before she got married to him, it all kind of came out in the first year of marriage, you know, there'd probably be grounds for annulment. You know, they say that a valid marriage never took place. Okay? You know, if there was a real deception in character, there were things, if she entered into the marriage, there were things she didn't know that were very serious, and affected the consent she gave, okay, the consent in marriage, okay, then there's something defective in the consent, and the church, when it proclaims an annulment, says that no marriage actually took place because the consent was defective. Okay, that can be checked out a little bit, you know, but in many cases that's not the case, okay. Like this might happen 15 years into marriage when, you know, there's already 3 or 4 children, it may actually have to live separately. You know, some people are divorced against their will. Okay, and they say, I'm a divorced person. But we see that not as kind of sinful or wrong. They're not guilty. You know, that person can still receive communion, sacraments, whatever. Okay, I've been divorced against my will, you know. And there are different connotations where someone is divorced by the other spouse where they say that there's an innocent party, and we recognise that. So it's not always just, there are different kind of complexities in divorce as well, okay? But I think if you willingly want to get divorced and you know it's against Catholic teaching and you're not happy, I think you are acting in a way that's against what we understand as marriage, and against the dignity of marriage, yeah. Yeah.
In the case of divorce together, you can only receive communion until you, like, you can't receive communion if you go and marry again.
No.
It's only, like, if you stay divorced against your will,
Yeah.
stay there.
Yeah, there's a few other situations where you can still receive, you know. But if you marry a second time,
You can't.
yeah, you're seen as being in a regular situation,
Yeah.
and we say it's objectively disordered, that it's turned against the commandments of God. It's turned against the dignity of marriage. Okay, so that's where you can do it. You can participate in the church. You can go to church. You can be part of the church community every Sunday. That's not a difficulty. Okay. But receiving Holy Eucharist and confession there, that's not possible unless you renounce the second union. Yeah. Or if there are children from the second union, then you have responsibility for the children. And say a pastor or confessor may ask you to live chastely. You look after the children that are there from the second union. You're responsible for them, but you live as brother and sister. And in such situations where there's no scandal given, you can receive communion. Okay. So the second union is seen as adulterous. Okay, in that sense. And Pope Francis is trying to help people in these situations as well, you know. That I don't think he's happy just to leave people in their sin or in adultery. Just he wants to try and encourage them to come back to the church, fully, you know. I think, you know. And they can meet with their pastor and you can work out something, you know.
One last question?
Yeah.
Two last
Two
questions.
last question.
Oh yeah, so if you're married, right?
Yeah.
And you have kids and everything, what if they all die? Can you marry again, right? Like,
You only
one
married
thing
up to-
no, there was one case where one of the priests, right?
Yeah.
So he was already married, but all the wife and all the kids were passed away, so he became a priest.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Marriage is only until death.
Oh, it's not
Yeah.
yeah. That, is not it?
Until death do us part. All the days of our life. Okay. You're a priest forever. You're a priest in heaven,
Oh, really?
but you're only married until you die.
Right.
You know, for example, there was a lovely man, Leo Edgar. He became a widower around 60 in England. I lived with him for a short while, and his wife died, and he didn't know what to do. And he had a friend, a Dominican, who said, you know, why don't you train for priesthood and give you something to do, because it was a hard time in his life. And he started studying for the priesthood, and the priest was training. When he got to about 6th year in priest, you know, as a deacon, he was learning how to say mass. I remember Father John saying to me, he was teaching how to say mass. He says, I couldn't get over the wedding ring on his finger. You know, he'd say mass and he'd see the wedding ring, you know. Just, there was a beauty in it at the same time, you know. He'd been faithful to his wife. She'd gone to God, and now he was, you know, living out of vocation as a priest. He couldn't have when he was married, you know.
Like when your children are like independent, can you
Yeah, you can. That's happened. There's a Dominican. He died a few years ago. Yeah, his children had grown up, and his wife had died, I presume, and then he wanted to become a Dominican, so he became a Dominican. His children kind of stayed in relationship with his adult children. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Naveen, did you have one more
Yeah,
question?
just another question. It's related to something that Helen had asked. There was like, okay, I'll put it as a hypothetical. So,
Yeah.
if a person has had like gender reassignment and stuff,
Yeah.
like, and they're transgender,
Yeah.
but later on they kind of have an encounter with God and want to enter the church, like, you know.
Mhm.
So, like, what's the story with like, do we give communion? Like, how do we not just how do we journey with them? How do we kind of what's the situation within the church actually? Is what I'm asking. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's no difficulty with them. Well, first of all, we recognise people with a psychological condition, okay, where they believe that their assigned sex is not their sex, okay, and they identify with the other, okay. Say some people take it as far, they go to surgeons and they go to consultants and they get sex reassignment, okay, and often get divorced from the church and things like that, you know. In that situation, you know, say they come to a realization I made the wrong decision. I've got a better sense of myself. This happened 15 years ago, and there's in gender reassignment there's often that regret. You know, surgeons talk about that. You know, regret is not infrequent. Okay, they regretted it. You know, as a confessor, you can hear that person's confession. You can give them absolution, and you can advise them to get involved in their parish. They can go to Holy Communion. Okay, now, it depends, you know, the medical complexity of this thing I can't really answer, okay? Because it may be irreversible. Yeah, so what you don't want to cause in the parish community is a scandal. You know, that might scandalise or confuse people, you know. So that we have to treat it kind of separately, you know, what they're going to reveal in their parish community. How they're going to, you know, they're not going to make a statement on this, or it's going to kind of confuse or kind of cause divisions, things like that, you know. So that, and, you know, is it reversible or is it irreversible, or how can they live there? That's another question kind of outside the confession box that they need ongoing kind of counselling and accompaniment on, you know. But they can come back fully to the church. Does that answer it? Yeah, as best I can kind of, but it's complicated. You know.
See, it's like the reason I asked was like it's something even if they're kind of journeying back towards God and the church, like, you know, one of the realizations they may not have, but